Have you ever wondered why brilliant, truly intelligent people sometimes believe things that just seem obviously wrong? It's a fascinating puzzle, right? In this explainer, we're going to pull back the curtain and look at the fragile architecture of belief that makes every single one of us, no matter how smart, vulnerable to getting things wrong. So, to kick things off, let's look at a case study that is just perfect. How did the man who gave us the world's greatest detective, a character who is the absolute embodiment of logic and reason, end up falling for what was, well, literally a childish hoax?
Meet Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. This is the mind behind the hyper-rational Sherlock Holmes, a man who could untangle the most complex mysteries using nothing but pure, cold logic. And yet, this same man was a passionate, deeply committed believer in spiritualism and, you guessed it, fairies.
Yeah, this is the famous case of the Cottingley fairies. Back in the early 20th century, a couple of young girls produced these photographs claiming they were real-life pictures of fairies in their garden. And Conan Doyle? He was completely sold. He didn't just believe it, he championed it, writing articles and even a book. The reality, of course, was that the fairies were just paper cutouts from a book, held up with pins. The evidence was, quite literally, paper thin.
So, what in the world is going on here? How could the brilliant creator of Sherlock Holmes fall for something so simple? Well, to understand Doyle, we have to look under the hood at the default settings of the human brain, because it turns out we are all wired to believe. You see, neuroscientists tell us something pretty profound. Our brains aren't really truth-seeking machines. They are belief machines. They evolved for one primary purpose: survival. And that often means making quick, good enough decisions, not necessarily the most accurate ones. Our brains are hardwired to find patterns and make connections, even when there's nothing there.
A great way to think about this is that we have two systems constantly running in our heads. You've got the fast, emotional, intuitive monkey brain, and then you have the slower, more logical, deliberate frontal lobe. The monkey brain makes snap judgments. The frontal lobe does the hard work of careful analysis. And here's the catch. The monkey brain is our default setting. It's always on, and it's always faster.
Now, one of the monkey brain's absolute favorite shortcuts is a phenomenon called pareidolia. This is our built-in tendency to see meaningful patterns, especially faces, in completely random noise. Think of it as our brain's overeager pattern-matching software running on overdrive.
This is exactly why we see faces in clouds, or the man in the moon, or hear strange words in random static. Our brain would much rather invent a pattern that isn't really there than just accept randomness. It's an old survival instinct, you know? Better to mistake a stick for a snake than to miss a real snake. But in our modern world, that instinct can get us into a lot of trouble.
Okay, so you take this hyperactive pattern-seeking drive, and you combine it with a few other mental shortcuts, and what you get are predictable glitches in our thinking, these little misfires in our belief engine. Let's look at three of the big ones. First, confirmation bias. This is our tendency to hunt for any piece of evidence that confirms what we already think is true, while conveniently ignoring anything that challenges it. Then you've got motivated reasoning, which means our emotions and our sense of identity get a first look at the evidence before our logical brain even has a chance. And finally, there's source amnesia. This is that weird thing where you remember a fact, but you have no idea where you heard it, making it impossible to know if it's credible.
And this is the really wild part. As the neurologist Dr. Steven Novella puts it, confidence is not a good predictor of accuracy. Think about that. The feeling of certainty, that absolute conviction that you are right, has absolutely no relationship to whether you actually are. That feeling is just your brain's way of telling you it's made up its mind, not that it's found the truth.
So, if our brains are this flawed, are we just doomed to be fooled all the time? Well, no, not at all. Because over hundreds of years, we've developed an incredibly powerful toolkit specifically designed to counteract these natural tendencies. It's a way to build a better reality filter.
And that toolkit is the scientific method. But it's not just for labs and people in white coats. It's a whole mindset. Science starts with evidence and then works forward. Crucially, it actively tries to disprove its own ideas. It sees criticism as essential. Pseudoscience does the exact opposite. It starts with a conclusion it really wants to be true, and then it works backward, cherry-picking data and treating any criticism like a personal attack. One is about finding the truth, the other is about defending a belief.
And the great news is, we can all apply these principles in our own thinking. First, practice systematic doubt. Start by questioning your own assumptions. Second, don't just look for confirmation, actively seek to falsify. Go looking for the best arguments against your idea.
And third, check with others. See if your idea can stand up to the honest criticism of people who might disagree. That is how you build your own reality testing filter.
And all of this leads us to what is probably the single most important skill for navigating our complex, chaotic, information-drenched world with any kind of clarity.
It's called metacognition. It's a big word for a simple idea. It's the act of thinking about your own thinking. It's the ability to step outside of yourself for a moment and ask, wait a minute, how am I arriving at this conclusion? Am I really looking at the evidence, or am I just trying to support an emotion I'm having? It is the ultimate intellectual self-check.
The brilliant physicist Richard Feynman said it better than anyone. The first principle is that you must not fool yourself, and you are the easiest person to fool. Realizing our own incredible capacity for self-deception, that's not a weakness. It's the absolute foundation of intellectual honesty and true critical thinking.
So the real takeaway here is this. It's not about being the smartest person in the room. Even geniuses get fooled by their own minds. It's all about the process we use to arrive at our beliefs. Which leaves us with one final thought to chew on. What's a belief you're absolutely certain of? And have you ever seriously tried to prove it wrong?